Yo, what is going on, you guys? So today I'm bringing guys a brand new sports cards video. In today's video, I'm going to be answering a question that you guys have been asking me a lot, and that is whether to be buying up vintage or modern cards. Now, if you guys saw my last video, I kind of gave you guys a full outlook on the sports card market, where I believe prices are going, and overall, the feel of the market. In my opinion. Of course, everyone has their own opinion on this, but if you are one who believes what I believe and you want to invest in sports cards, the big question is vintage or modern. I've heard a lot of other, sports card YouTubers, Instagrammers, kind of push this narrative that vintage is the safest route and vintage is the best route. And I totally agree with that in terms of a long-term outlook, in terms of a safety, bigger investor outlook. However, I do totally understand it from the side of those who are, just getting started. Say you have $100 and someone keeps preaching to you that you should invest in a slow growth, kind of sports card or in general investment, right? Where you can gain, say, 20% a year on your money. And a lot of, especially my followers, right? A lot of you guys who are watching this, may not be satisfied with that. You guys may want to kind of do more, it's more like growth stocks, right? In terms of modern sports cards, the risk is higher, but also the reward is clearly higher. We've seen a lot of players who have great years, their prices can do 5x in a year, right? 10x in a year. We've definitely seen it happen before. And so I kind of want to break down what situations you should be buying up modern cards, what situations you should be buying up vintage cards, and the overall benefits and, I guess downsides to each and every one of them. So in terms of vintage, first of all, we'll start, vintage sports cards are proven to be great long-term investments. I think in the long term, nobody's arguing that, especially given the supply on most of these cards are much, much lower than they are today, in terms of modern cards. And that is simply because a lot of these vintage cards, even if they're overprinted, the PSA 10 and PSA 9 pops are much lower because it's a lot harder to get a PSA 10 from a 1980s card compared to a card that just released out of this year's Prism, right? So naturally, the pops are much lower on those cards, and that is, of course, the main kind of thing that allows it to be a great, safe, long-term investment. And of course, the demand is still there, and it's kind of proven, especially for the very significant players, such as Michael Jordan, Kobe, of course, and Patrick Ewing, a lot of other guys from, past generations, that their prices are really holding up. And I definitely agree with that. But my personal opinion, I guess, in terms of giving advice to someone who has a couple $100 in their bank account, I don't think vintage cards is going to be what makes you rich per se, or what, allows you to hit the ball on the bat and just make money, right? I guess in terms of investing, talking about, making money, I would say vintage cards are a safer long-term investment, a great investment for people who already have a lot of capital and who just want steady growth. Now, modern cards are an incredible flipping opportunity, an incredible way to make fast money, make bets, more like sports gambling. But there's kind of an in-between that I really want to focus on in this video. And this is where I personally play the majority of my money. And that is in between two different things. So first of all, wax. I think wax is the easiest and best way to bet on a draft class instead of one player, right? Because, for example, if you had bet on the 2019 Prism basketball, right, and you were buying up those boxes, first of all, supply can only go down, right? Because breakers are opening up these boxes. The supply of these boxes is going to go down as boxes get opened. They're not making more boxes. So, supply is going to go down. That is one given in terms of, newer or just in general modern wax, right? So supply is going to go down as breakers open it. And then you can bet on a whole draft class. So if you had bet on 2019 basketball, everyone may have thought Zion was going to be the guy. And if you bought a lot of Zion cards, chances are you're down a lot of money. But if you bought up 2019 wax, there's a lot of other players who turned into incredible players, such as Tyler Hero, Ja Morant, of course, right? So there's a lot of different players who end up being incredible players. Darius Garland, there's so many others that have really started to pop off, and will probably continue to see players from the 2019 draft class take their next steps in their career in the next coming years. And so that is the easiest way to bet on modern players. If you're a believer in Zion, you hold a lot less risk buying a 2019 Prizm basketball box in which the supply is going to go down. And even if Zion doesn't pan out, there's going to be other players who have great seasons. There's going to be other players from the draft class that do really well. And so that's probably one of the easiest ways to bet on a player, is just betting on their draft class in general. And that's something I do a lot to kind of hedge my bet, right? If I'm wrong, I'm not getting crushed 90%, right? And if I'm right, I'm still seeing great rewards, right? So that is one thing I really love to do. And then second of all is buying up modern players who are established, and who have already had some sort of legacy, right? I really look at guys like Steph Curry. I was a big investor in him from 2020 onwards, because my personal thinking was everything from here is up, right? His current prices, he's the 3-point king, right? He was already at that point, 3-time finals champion, right? He was a 2-time MVP, first ever unanimous MVP. Just overall the greatest shooter of all time, probably a top 15 player of all time, undoubtedly, even before this season. And so what I thought was, prices are already, the current price a year ago was already kind of representing what he had done in the past in his career. So the downside is very minimal, but he still has a chance to win more championships, right? And so that leaves so much more upside. So if you're buying up guys like Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Steph Curry, other GOATs of our year, right? Or of our generation, I should say. You're holding a lot less risk because the downside is very minimal. They've already proven to be superstars. They're already going to be relevant in the long term. Kevin Durant's probably already a top 20, top 25 player of all time, if not much higher. LeBron James is already, in most people's opinion, a top 3 player of all time. Steph Curry is, in most people's opinion, a top 15 player of all time. So they're going to hold long-term relevance no matter what. Even if, KD, LeBron, or Steph gets injured tomorrow and their career's over, you're not going to lose 95% of your value, right? Such as if Zion tears his Achilles, that's quite tough, right? And his card market's going to crash. But if you're looking at guys who have already proven themselves, you hold a lot less downside, but you still hold the same upside, if not more, because guys like Kevin Durant, LeBron, and Steph are just adding to their legacy. And so I just see a lot more upside compared to downside. And that's what I really look for in investments, right? I want to make sure I can maximize the upside for my potential downside. And so if I'm finding investments that I believe have a lot less downside than upside, I'm going to always go for that. And I just see that in Kevin Durant's market right now. I see that in Steph's market right now. I see that in LeBron's market right now. Steph a little bit less because he just won a championship. And so his prices are a little bit inflated compared to most. But I still believe it's an incredible investment, right? You're holding less risk and you still have an upside if he wins another championship. Or if he continues to climb the all-time rankings. And I think when these players retire is when we're really going to see their prices start to really jump, is, from my personal experience, is when the jump happens. I think that's when people really look back on their careers, and big Steph Curry fans, big Durant fans, big LeBron fans, when they retire, this is like their way of kind of representing, them being a fanatic of that player. So I think from a collector's perspective, a lot of people love to collect their players when they retire as well. So just a lot of demand starts to come in around that time. And I think a lot of people are really missing opportunities in the market in terms of, going after these young players who, if you're buying up 5 young players, 3 or 4 of them may not pan out and you may end up losing most of your money on them. So you're just limiting your upside, because even if you're right on 1 or 2 out of 5, which is pretty good, right? Out of 5 players who have potential, usually 1 actually takes it to the next level. And so I just see a lot more upside and a lot better of an investment strategy just going for that in between, guys who still have the upside of modern players. Because let's be honest, modern players always get a premium. If you look at Shaq's card market, you could list out a random, young star, right? Such as Michael Porter Jr., whose National Treasures cards may be going for as much as, Shaquille O'Neal's most iconic cards. And so you obviously see a great premium within modern cards, but then how do you take advantage of that while also minimizing your downside? And I think the perfect compromise is going for those players who have already proven themselves and are not just here to, for a year or 2 years, or could get injured. Or if my just biggest thing is, if I'm holding on to a card and that player gets injured tomorrow and their career is over, what percentage of that card am I going to lose? If I look at Tyler Hero, if I look at Zion Williamson, if I look at a Cade Cunningham, their prices are going to get slaughtered. If I'm looking at a LeBron, I think they're going to hold up in, quite steady long term, right? So I definitely think that's where the upside lies. And then, of course, another big thing is expectation. So expectation is blended into the price. And that is one thing a lot of people should kind of understand. LeBron right now, KD right now, they're not expected to win a championship next year. The Lakers had a terrible season this year. The Nets got swept in the first round. So the expectation's low, and the price is right now reflecting how they just performed. So if Kevin Durant's price right now is reflecting him getting swept, if LeBron's price right now is reflecting him not making the playoffs, if LeBron makes the playoffs next year, boom, that's better than expectations, and prices should go up. It's like a stock, right? Each company is expected to earn this much next quarter. If they exceed that, prices are going to go up. If they fall short of that, prices are going to go down. And so buying the downside of Kevin Durant, because I personally don't believe Kevin Durant will get swept again in the playoffs. So I think the upside is much larger than the downside. So I definitely think these are investments to keep in mind. If you guys are interested in joining the program, the link will be down below. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'm out. Peace.